Sorry about that. Not very professional. Well, conflict is raging in the Middle East over numerous different grievances that both the Arabs and Israelis have acquired or accumulated over the past 75 years. There is one grievance which Hamas has stated quite plainly they meant to bring up during this current conflict, one which the vast majority of people are genuinely not talking about, or if they are talking about it in a very dismissive and, shall we say, conspiratorial kind of way if they are not dismissing it. This show is meant to shed some light on this particular issue, which I don't think a lot of people are privy to, and which I think has vast implications in regards to whether or not this entire world will descend very quickly into all-out war, or, frankly, whether or not the biblical times which I say we are living in are, in fact, here and stronger than ever. This intro is obviously not going to be able to get you quite to the place I'd like you to get, but that's what we got a program for. So stick around, and welcome to this episode of The Watchdog. Happy to have you guys here. Shalom, friends, and welcome to today's episode of The Watchdog. I am your host, CJ Cox, here to tell you that we are indeed living in biblical times. For those of you who are here with us watching live, or for that matter, if you're watching after the fact, sorry, I got a hair here. Please do remember to like and share this video, and please consider subscribing to this channel if you have not done so. Hit that bell to get notified every single time that we go live, which lately has not been much, but I am certainly trying to do more in regards to not only this channel, but also the other channel as well. Though I think a lot of people are relatively satisfied with the other channel. Anyways, this show airs exclusively on the TheCynicogue News, so please do remember to subscribe if you like our program. Also, please do consider following us on the Rumble account. Link will be provided in the description after the fact. If you're watching this live, I have not yet actually set up a description. We have a Rumble account because, number one, we want to support alternative social media and video formatting platforms. Obviously, we are living in a world where social media and other internet companies have far too much control over what we can and can't say and what we should or should not believe, quite frankly. So we want to support companies like Rumble that are actually allowing freedom of speech, that are actually allowing conservative and Christian voices to speak freely. So definitely do consider subscribing to the Rumble account for that reason. But also, it is possible that this episode in particular and this show in general, this channel in general, could end up removed from YouTube at some point in time. We do try to strike a balance between not being unnecessarily censorious while also not being unnecessarily offensive so as not to get ourselves removed. However, the fact of the matter is sometimes there's just not a whole lot you can do about that sort of thing, considering the fact that the overlords are not very privy on standard Christian and conservative talking points. So if you like this solid, steeped in Christian tradition, Burkean style of conservatism, American nationalism, and look into geopolitics and the socio-political culture of our day, please do consider subscribing to the Rumble account so that you have a backup. So that if any of our videos are removed, or otherwise, if the channel and show itself are removed from this platform, you actually have recourse. You have somewhere else you can find this program. I think it's very important for us to support creators on Rumble, and I certainly hope that you guys are doing so today. You can also follow me on various social media platforms. I am on Facebook. I am on Gab. I am on Minds, Truth Social, MeWe, and Telegram. You can find me at the tag TheCynicogue. Oh, and I forgot to mention X, formerly known as Twitter, as well. You can follow me on any of those at the tag TheCynicogue. I certainly appreciate anybody who is following me there. And if you are following me there, or are frequenting those platforms yourself, please do consider sharing this video to those platforms, as of course, doing so will help us to get more of a reach. I want to go ahead and let you guys know about any sort of channel housekeeping that we have. There's not a whole lot, but just remember that when we do have content, which hopefully we're trying to do this more and more and more as time goes on, but when we do have content, we are going to be posting Fridays and, excuse me, not Fridays, my apologies, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And sometimes when we have it, we do like to post debates or interviews or special reports on Wednesdays. I have been trying to get the Bloglodite blog set up again. Right now, if you do subscribe to the Patreon, the Bloglodite blog has been a little bit on a hiatus, so to speak. So you're not actually getting anything for it other than supporting the work we do here. I appreciate anybody who's doing that. If you want to support, links to the PayPal and to the Patreon will be found underneath. You can give as much or as little as you like. If you do give $5 monthly, that does allow you access to our blog, but I must warn you that recently I have unfortunately not been adding any entries to that blog. Now, I do plan on changing that here very soon. Like I said, hopefully next Saturday, because this Saturday I want to do an episode of Breakfast Tea. So hopefully next Saturday, we are going to be having a new entry in the Bloglodite series. But anybody who is interested in supporting us, regardless of the entry, please do consider subscribing to our Patreon. And if you're watching this after the fact, the link will be provided down below. There is not really any channel housekeeping because this channel has been so kind of will they, won't they, so to speak, for such a long period of time that we just don't have a lot of consistency as of yet. So I do apologize for that, by the way, friends. And I want you to know we are trying to be more and more consistent, right? Because obviously this is a news program, and a news program and news blog don't really have much of a function if we're not actually consistently providing you with news. So, with that being said, we are trying to be more consistent here, and I do appreciate those of you guys who have been sticking around through this little trial and tribulation that is me trying to get my head on straight in regards to YouTube. It is difficult maintaining 2 different channels, 3 if you include the music, while also writing a blog and writing a book and trying to go to college and working a full-time job, being married and all these. I mean, I bit off more than I can chew, to be honest with you guys, but I will chew it. I swear to you, there is no choking going on this side of the dinner table, okay? We will not be wasting a perfectly good steak. So this metaphor is getting away from me, but nevertheless, we are going to try and be more consistent with this. I might end up recording some of these before so that there's really no live. There's just premieres. And maybe that'll actually help a little bit with getting these episodes out on time. But nevertheless, this is the only real quote unquote channel housekeeping we have at the moment, besides, like, share, subscribe, all that other kind of good stuff. So there you have that there. So do we have any sort of a this day in history today? Well, no, not really. But it's mostly because I just wanted to say a Chag Pesach Sameach to all of my Jewish friends out there. This is the last day of Passover, so a happy Passover to you guys as well. Of course, only if you're in the diaspora. If you're actually in Israel, I guess Passover is already over, but nevertheless, and it's dark outside, so I guess it's already over at this point. Anyways, but nevertheless, wanted to say that. So anybody who does celebrate, whether you be Hebrew roots, Messianic Jew, Jewish, whatever, doesn't matter. I don't care. Love y'all, and I want you guys to have a happy, or I hope you guys already did, I guess I should say, have a happy Passover. So there you go with that. So today's episode is going to be rather interesting. We're not going to read the entirety of most of these articles simply because there's so much, and I want to get you guys a solid understanding of the thing that I'm trying to teach you about today. You saw in that little really poorly orchestrated intro that I had, that what I want to be revealing to you guys today is it's not so much a secret per se, but it's kind of a secret reason for the current Hamas conflict, Israel-Hamas conflict right now. So for those of you who have been living under a rock, which I highly doubt is anybody who's watching this program, Israel has been at war with Hamas for quite some time. And if you didn't know that, then quite frankly, I would just like to know what area of the planet you're living on. It seems significantly less stressful than the area of the planet that I'm currently living on. But nevertheless, so Israel and Hamas have, of course, been at war since October the 7th, 2023. It is currently April the 30th, 2024, right? And excuse me. And this whole conflict was started for a litany of reasons. There was a perceived threat to the status quo at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is currently, sorry about that, which is currently sitting there on the Temple Mount, right? And there was perceived threats on the part of Hamas to what they considered Palestinian sovereignty, right? They didn't like the fact that Israel was becoming buddy-buddy with the Gulf states, such as Saudi Arabia, in a sort of anti-Iranian alliance. They wanted to force the Gulf states to actually choose, you're going to be pro-Palestine, or is your hatred for Iran going to cause you to take this pro-Israel approach? So they kind of wanted to force the issue there. They obviously want to make Israel look bad and cause all the international parties to come together. And hang on, I got to grab something here. Just got to get my notepad. Make Israel look bad and cause all the international parties to basically start to force the issue. Hey, Palestinian statehood, that whole kind of thing. They had a lot of different goals there, but that first goal, or that first grievance, rather, the threat to the status quo at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is one that I think is going underreported in mainstream media, even though it's actually the reason the war is going on. This is not speculation on my part, by the way. This is not, I have a certain agenda I want to share with you guys, and so therefore we're going to say this is the primary issue, even though there's all these other different issues that may or may not take greater precedent. No, that's actually not it. Hamas themselves has said very plainly that they fear Israel is going to build a third temple very soon, and they do have legitimate reason to be concerned of that, although, of course, whether or not that is a legitimate concern for them to have, considering the fact that it's Israeli land, it's Jewish land, it's the holiest site in all of Judaism. This is a very complicated issue, and I don't want to take sides here. That's not what I'm trying to say. I just want to report to you guys the fact that this is something that is a legitimate concern on the part of Hamas, in so much as that it is actually a threat, not a legitimate concern in the sense that it was justifying their warfare or anything like that. It's not what I'm saying. This is a very pro-Israel channel. Okay, I'm a Zionist. Not that any of you guys care necessarily, but I just want to be clear in case anybody's going to take this out of context, right? But this is, I think, like I said, underreported reason for the war. It's the primary reason the war is taking place. And I just want us to be talking more about it, and we're going to continue to talk more and more and more about it as time goes on. So first off, let me pull up the banner here, because of course we have to do that. And I didn't actually type the banner out yet because I am a very unprofessional person, apparently. Here we go. Red Heifers and Third Temples. There it is. So let's go ahead and dive right into the first article we're going to be looking into today. So the very first one I want to get to, and we're going to do special reports on this in the coming days, because I want to be able to go through in excruciating detail and having everything pre-planned, basically the history that gets us to the point we're currently at, right? You guys may recall so far the only special report we've actually done on this program was reading through Hamas's charter. And we may end up doing something like that again to get it a little bit more succinct with not as much commentary or something along the lines. I'm not really sure quite yet. But I want to do something similar with this Third Temple thing, and with the Temple Institute, and with the Red Heifers, and a lot of these other things. The establishment of a United Nations for Religions, all this kind of stuff. I want to get in-depth videos out to you guys so that you guys know precisely what it is that we're trying to talk about here, and why I am so confident in the things that I've been predicting for so many years. But this video will have to suffice for now. And we want to start with this article from the Jerusalem Post, Can Third Temple Be Built Without Destroying Dome of the Rock, by Matthew Wagner, 2009, June 21st, 2009, right? So, and this is just to say there's two reasons we actually reference this article. We're not going to read through the whole thing. That'll be for a special report that comes later on. The two main reasons to reference this article and at least give you a surface idea is, number one, this is a mainstream news source. Jerusalem Post is not InfoWars. It's not Breitbart. It's not even Daily Wire, which is a legitimate news source, but which nevertheless is considered partisan in the eyes of many. And ditto for MSNBC or something like that. No, this is a mainstream, considered to be nonpartisan news source that happens to be one of the most popular news organizations in the nation of Israel. Right? That's the first reason we want to let you guys know about this. This is not conspiracy theory. This is not Jesse Ventura or Alex Jones or Nick Fuentes or what have you. Okay, this is stuff that's actually happening. It's actually going down. The second reason we want to reference this article is because of that date, 2009, right? This is something that's been building up, and well before 2009, by the way. I can show you videos from Rabbi Meir Kahane from back in the 1980s talking about rebuilding of a new temple. I can show you the Temple Institute's founder, whose name is fleeting me at the moment, talking back in the 1980s. I can show you these Noahide meetings back in the 1980s and so on and so forth, right? So, and the Noahide thing is blown out of proportion by anti-Semites, don't get me wrong, but nevertheless, we want to establish that this is a mainstream thing, and we also want to establish that the build-up to this has been happening for quite some time. And of course, also hints to the fact that we will be reading this article in full, as well as numerous articles in the later special report to come at some undisclosed time. I'm not sure yet. Okay. Nevertheless, can Third Temple be built without destroying the Dome of the Rock? New Jewish interfaith initiatives hope to show that Jews' end-of-days vision could harmoniously accommodate Islam's present architectural hegemony on the Temple Mount. So this is obviously something that is quite important to the Jewish people. They want to build a third temple, and of course, this is an area that is quite important to Muslims as well, as they have their Dome of the Rock there, which is the third holiest site in all of Islam, and is considered, according to their religion, to be the site where Muhammad actually ascended into heaven, right? So this is a very important place archaeologically, religiously, just for peace in the entire world. And there is, or at least there was, a chatter in 2009 about potentially building a temple kind of parallel to the Dome of the Rock, rather than over the top of it, like the current Temple Institute wants to suggest. Reading briefly, a new Jewish interfaith initiative launched last week argues building the third Jewish temple in Jerusalem would not necessitate the destruction of the Dome of the Rock. Quote, God's Holy Mountain Vision Project hopes to diffuse religious strife by showing the Jews' end-of-days vision could harmoniously accommodate Islam's present architectural hegemony on the Temple Mount. Quote, this vision of religious shrines in peaceful proximity can transform the Temple Mount from a place of contention to its original sacred role as a place of worship shared by Jews, Muslims, and Christians, end quote, said Yoav Frankel, director of the initiative. The Interfaith Encounter Association at the Mishkanot, sorry, I'm going to say this probably wrong, Sha'ananim, Konrad Adenauer, oh my goodness, I cannot talk at all right now. I'm sorry, friends. Adenauer Conference Center in Jerusalem is sponsoring the program, which includes interfaith study and other educational projects. According to Islamic tradition, the Dome of the Rock, built in 691, that's AD, marks the spot where Muhammad ascended to heaven. But according to Jewish tradition, Mount Moriah, now under the Dome of the Rock, is where the temple's Holy of Holies was situated. Until now, Jewish tradition has assumed that destruction of the Dome of the Rock was a precondition for the building of the third temple and the also last temple, presumably. However, in an article that appeared in 2007 in Tehumin, an influential journal of Jewish law, Frankel, a young scholar, presented a different option. His main argument is that the Jewish doctrine regarding the building of the temple emphasizes the role of a prophet. This prophet would have extraordinary authority, including the discretion to specify the temple's precise location, regardless of any diverging Jewish traditions. So, like I said, we're not going to read the entire article here. There's a lot of other stuff. Well, actually, you know what? It is pretty short. We can do that. Never mind. Let's go ahead and go with it. Frankel considers the scenario of a holy revelation given to an authentic prophet that the temple be rebuilt on the current or an extended Temple Mount in peaceful proximity to the dome and other houses of prayer, such as the Aqsa Mosque and nearby Christian shrines. However, both Muslims and Jews have expressed opposition to the initiative. Sheikh Abdullah Namar Darwish, founder of the Islamic movement in Israel, said it was pointless to talk about what would happen when the Mahdi, the Muslim equivalent of the Messiah, would reveal himself. Notice this really quick. I want you guys to notice the kinds of things that Frankel is saying here, right? He's saying a prophet receiving new revelation, and the interpretation from Sheikh Darwish here is that this person would have to be the Mahdi, right? Well, obviously, if somebody's claiming to be a prophet, and he's also in the Jewish tradition and also claiming to be the Mahdi in the Islamic tradition, probably claiming to be the second coming of Jesus in the Christian tradition, right? This figure is a figure who, whether you believe in the Bible or not, definitely sounds an awful lot like an antichrist. See what I mean? Definitely sounds an awful lot like the kind of guy who is going to be bringing a bunch of false religions together into one cohesive body, right? Definitely sounds like the kind of guy who is going to be taking the place of Christ. Definitely sounds like the kind of guy who is going to be worshipped when he has no business being worshipped. Definitely sounds like the kind of guy who could establish a global order, new world order. And this, again, is in the Jerusalem Post. This is not in InfoWars or anything of the like. So, this is an incredibly important thing to realize as you read this article. And we'll go deeper into that particular point later on in another show. But I just hope you guys understand the severity of what Frankel is claiming here and the way that Marish is taking this, right? So let's see, where did I lose that point? To a meme, there being a temple, this prophet would have extraordinary. Let's see. Here we are. Darwish said in a telephone interview with the Jerusalem Post, quote, even Jews believe that it is prohibited to rebuild the temple unless the Messiah comes. You have this same kind of language, right? So what is there to talk about? The Mahdi will decide whether or not to rebuild the temple. If he decides that it should be rebuilt, I will go out to the Temple Mount and help carry rocks. Notice the Muslim guy here is saying that if the Mahdi were to come and say, hey, the temple needs to be rebuilt, I would personally assist him. So even Islamic scholars are saying, yeah, I would accept the word of this person, right? Darwish warned against any attempt to rebuild the temple before the coming of the Mahdi. Quote, as long as there is a Muslim alive, no Jewish temple will be built on Al-Haram al-Sharif, the Temple Mount. The status quo must be maintained, otherwise there will be bloodshed. Keep that in mind as we say that this current conflict, this current Hamas-Israel war, is the primary reason for this fight is, in fact, what Hamas believes is a threat to that current status quo, just as Sheikh Darwish is actually saying in this article back in 2009, 15 years ago. Okay. In contrast, Baruch ben Yosef, chairman of the movement to restore the temple, made it clear that the temple had to be built where the Dome of the Rock presently stands. Quote, anybody who says anything else simply does not know what he is talking about, end quote. He said, quote, a prophet does not have the power to change the law, which explicitly states the location of the temple, end quote. Ben Yosef also rejected the idea that rebuilding the temple had to be done by a prophet. Quote, all you need is a Sanhedrin, which has been established, by the way, end quote. He said, mainstream Orthodox rabbis have opposed attempts to rebuild the temple since the Mount came under Israeli control in 1967. The chief rabbinate of Israel even issued a decree prohibiting Jews from entering the area due to ritual purity issues. However, several grassroots organizations, such as the Movement to Restore the Temple, and maverick rabbis, including Rabbi Israel Ariel, head of the capital's Temple Institute, which we were referencing a little earlier, and a leading member of the revived Sanhedrin, told you it's been established, led by Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, have called to take steps to renew the sacrifices on the Temple Mount and rebuild the temple. So as far back as 2009, and well before that, by the way, the Temple Institute was founded in 1988. As far back as 2009, there was discussion about the rebuilding of this temple. There were people calling for the rebuilding of this temple, calling for the reinstitution of Old Testament sacrifices, such as the red heifer sacrifice and things like that. Okay, so we have a little itty bitty tiny bit of context established for you guys. Yeah? So let's go ahead and show you now some of the more recent news that has been coming out. So first off, this is from Explainer. or Press TV, I guess. Explainer. I thought the Explainer here was the name of the website, but I guess it's Press TV. My apologies. Now, this is a decidedly pro-Palestinian article. Okay, so it does not reflect the opinions of CJ Cox or the Watchdog or the TheCynicogue News. Note that. But it's important for us to read it because it's important for us to understand what people who support Hamas and Palestine in this whole endeavor are actually saying as far as why the attack took place, on October the 7th, 2023. So this was originally written by a guy named Mehdi Mousvi, okay? And again, it is here on Press TV. I will create a link in the links in the description below so you guys can read all these articles for yourself. It was originally published on April the 6th, 2024. So mere days ago, talking 24 days ago, right? And keep in mind the context that we were already just establishing from 2009 from the Jerusalem Post. All right, the Al-Qassam Brigade's spokesperson, Abu Obadiah, in a speech marking the 100th day of the Israeli genocidal war on Gaza on January 14th, again, note that is not the opinions of the Watchdog, that is the opinion of the writer. He believes it's genocide. I do not. Nevertheless, just keep that in mind as we go through this article. Said the Zionist settlers were bringing red cows to the city of occupied Al-Quds and provoking native Palestinians. Now, notice this is not what Mehdi Mousvi is saying. This is what a spokesperson for the Al-Qassam Brigades was saying, namely Abu Obadiah. Okay? The masked spokesperson for Hamas's military wing explained that an Israeli aggression was being directed against Al-Quds and Al-Aqsa. Al-Quds being Jerusalem. My apologies. Quote, the start of the Temple Mount actual temporal and spiritual division and the bringing of red cows has an application of a detestable religious myth designed for aggression against the feelings of an entire nation in the heart of its Arab identity, end quote. According to reports, the regime in Tel Aviv secretly imported red cows, known as the red heifers, from Texas in 2022 to fulfill an ancient biblical prophecy. And it is, and is about to install a massive sacrificial altar in occupied Al-Quds as early as the Passover holiday this month. Now, of course, this is the last day of Passover here on April the 30th, 2024. Thus far, there has been no sacrifice, but we'll get to that in just a second. It is also important to note that Mr. Mousvi in this article is incorrect in saying the regime, as in Benjamin Netanyahu and the members of the Knesset, are the ones who are importing these cows. It is religious Jews who are importing these cows, specifically people who are what is known as Hardal. It is basically Haredi nationalists. Okay, so those people who usually Haredi Jews, that is to say ultra-Orthodox Jews, are anti-Zionist because they believe that only the Messiah is capable of actually establishing a state of Israel, right? At least legitimately. Hardal actually believe that is not the case. And so even though they are still Haredi Jews, they actually do support the establishment of a state of Israel, and they tend to support annexing of Judea and Samaria. They tend to support Jerusalem as an undivided capital of Israel, and they also, of course, tend to support the rebuilding of a third temple. Okay, so a little more background for you guys to get you caught up here on this issue. So what is this red heifer prophecy? Continuing with the article. The alleged red heifer narrative demonstrates the influence of Zionist beliefs on political environments and the potential for sparking conflicts with far-reaching consequences. Ancient Jewish texts allegedly claim that the red heifer was the bovine whose ashes were utilized in the cleansing rituals for individuals who had become impure by touching a dead body. The rules say that the red cow must be a female bovine that has never been pregnant, milked, or yoked, and must be like the cow brought to the priests as a sacrifice according to the Torah. The ancient records say that the ritual necessitates the sacrificial cow must adhere to a stringent criterion. It is imperative that the heifer is entirely red, devoid of any non-red hair, unblemished, and should not have been ridden by anyone. The Jewish understanding of ancient texts is that if one were to perform any labor with the red heifer, or someone simply riding it or leaning on it, it would no longer be fit for the ceremonial sacrifice. Some people have put forward more grave suggestions, indicating that there are intentions to imminently carry out the slaughter of a red heifer on the Mount of Olives in occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds. Remember, they obviously believe that Jerusalem is or Al-Quds as they call it, is occupied territory that actually belongs to Arabs. It's Muslim territory. Recall, if you have not seen it, please watch it. But if you have seen it, recall when we had read the Hamas charter, and they were quite clear that not only do they believe Israel is holy land, but all land that has ever been owned by Muslims is in fact Muslim holy land, even if Israel is specifically Muslim holy land, or maybe you should say especially Muslim holy land. But I digress. It has been reported that certain individuals associated with the Third Temple movement have acquired land in this area specifically for this purpose. Pin in that. We're going to be reading about it more in just a second. Excuse me. The sacrificial cow is discussed in Numbers 19, verses 1 through 22 in the Torah, which also reads as the final Torah reading on Shabbat Parah, the Sabbath of the red heifer, which occurs on the last Sabbath of the month of Adar, shortly before Passover, and we are, of course, past that point now. After the sacrifice takes place, its body must be burnt, and its ashes, must be used for the ritual purification of a corpse, corpse uncleanness caused by an Israelite coming into contact with a human corpse, human bone, or grave. In Jewish tradition, the ashes of a flawless red heifer cow are required for the ceremonial purification necessary for the construction of a third temple in Jerusalem. Muslim Palestinians, however, view it as a provocative symbol of the Israeli regime's project of settler colonial expansionism, in the occupied West Bank, or as we tend to call it, Judea and Samaria. Some radical Zionist groups hold a fervent desire for the construction of this temple, as they firmly believe that it would further hasten the coming of the Messiah, which of course is the exact opposite of what others believe, which is that only the Messiah is able to build a legitimate third temple. This is a dispute within religious Judaism, especially within the state of Israel. Okay. Why do Zionists want to build the third temple? After the second temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, at the height of the first Jewish-Roman war during the Roman siege of Al-Quds, it has been prophesied in the Hebrew Bible that Jewish prophets called for the construction of the third temple before or in tandem with the Messianic age. Radical Jewish groups say that the construction of the temple should take place on the elevated plateau in the old city of Al-Quds, specifically on the Temple Mount, where the Al-Aqsa compound, one of the holiest sites in Islam, currently exists. It is believed by Zionists that this event will mark the coming of the Messiah. The red cow holds such significance that the Temple Institute, a Zionist organization established in 1987, I said 1988 earlier, so I guess I was a year off, that advocates for the rebuilding of the temple, has made it their mission to locate one. They had raised funds to transfer frozen embryos into a cow's uterus at a nearby barn, utilizing biotechnology to fulfill a biblical prophecy through their initiative known as Raising the Red Cow in Israel. The ashes of the red heifer, essential for the renewal of the divine service in the Holy Temple, is one of the Torah's most fascinating and mysterious commandments, end quote, said the Temple Institute. What are the possible repercussions? Last week when this article was written, remember that was April the 6th, last week on March 27th, a conference was held near the occupied West Bank city of Nablus, which is Shechem, on the unauthorized Israeli settlement known as Shiloh. I guess it's Shiloh, not Shechem. I thought it was Shechem. I should probably double check that sort of thing before I go live, right? But anyways, a small group of Israelis gathered at the location to participate in discussions centered on the religious importance and essentiality of these cows. Additionally, the conference offered attendees the chance to observe these animals. This is a new moment for Jewish history. Chaim, a 38-year-old Israeli settler, was quoted as saying by the Middle East Eye as he prepared to take his seat, quote, "These cows were brought all the way from Texas and were reared in special conditions to maintain their purity," end quote, said Yehuda Singer, a 71-year-old from the Jericho, that's in Jericho, settlement, and the translator of a pamphlet on red heifers. The Zionists believe once the third temple is completed, it will speed up the coming of the Messiah, known to Muslims as the Dajjal, or as you saw previously from the other speaker, the Mahdi. The intent of the Zionists is the utter destruction of Al-Aqsa so they can commence building the temple of Dajjal on top of the ruins of it. It's so important to the Jews to return and rebuild the temple, Jewish activist Melissa Jane said. According to political experts, if Israel goes ahead with its plan to demolish the Al-Aqsa Mosque, again, it is important to note this is not a plan of the state of Israel, but this is the way that Hamas and other Palestinians feel about this, hence the current war. Anyways, according to political experts, if Israel goes ahead with its plan to demolish the Al-Aqsa Mosque, it would be an open invitation for Muslims worldwide to annihilate the regime. So you can clearly see the rhetoric here from Mr. Musfi in this article. You can see that this is something that is deeply concerning to him. And if we go back up, you can see the quotation he gave from this spokesperson of Hamas, the Al-Qassam Brigades in precise, which is the militant wing of Hamas, when he said that the Zionist regime, as he puts it, was bringing these red cows and that this was a provocation that actually led to the current conflict, right? So another article we want to read here to continue to expand your guys' minds in this particular regard. Now, that one was not nearly as mainstream a news source as the Jerusalem Post that we were reading earlier, so maybe we should go back to a more mainstream news source. And lo and behold, that's what we have, CBS News. What did these red cows from Texas have to do with war and peace in the Middle East? Originally written March the 5th, 2024 by Chris Livesey. At least I believe it's Livesey. I've never heard it pronounced. When Hamas spokesperson Abu Ubaidah began a speech marking the 100th day of the war in Gaza, one confounding yet eye-opening proclamation escaped the headlines. Notice he says escaped the headlines, and even with his writing about this, this has still managed to escape the vast majority of headlines. When people are wondering, what is this war about? I mean, obviously there's the 70 years, and it's really more than that, of conflict between Arabs and Israelis ever since 1948. But why specifically was the war started on October the 7th? Something had to have happened that provoked this war. And that is not, by the way, to say that Israel deserves this or anything like that, right? Obviously, you can be provoked to conflict and be in the wrong. That's totally possible, right? Like, for example, if I say I'm going to remove somebody's ability to abuse a certain ethnic group in their country. Let's just say hypothetically that there's some hypothetical country out there that is abusing a racial minority or an ethnic minority or what have you. And for whatever reason, I feel an attachment to that racial minority or ethnic minority, or maybe even I just want to defend them because of my common humanity. And so I say, you're not allowed to do that anymore. That could provoke that nation to war, but they're still in the wrong, obviously, right? So the fact that it's a provocation does not mean that we're saying Hamas is in the right here. Just want to make that very clear. So what is this thing that escaped the headlines? Well, we actually just read about it in the Press TV article. Listing the motives for the Palestinian militant group's October 7th massacre in Israel, he accused Jews of bringing red cows to the Holy Land. Okay? The cows he was talking about are red heifers, which now graze at a secure, undisclosed location in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, or again, Judea and Samaria. Some Jews and Christians believe they are key to rebuilding the Jewish temple that once stood in Jerusalem and to beckoning the Messiah. To understand, you have to look back almost 2,000 years in the tumultuous history of the Middle East when the ancient Romans destroyed that temple. Go ahead and quickly read more here. To rebuild it, fervent believers point to the Bible's book of Numbers, which commands the Israelites to offer a red heifer without defect or blemish and that has never been under a yoke. Only with that offering, they insist, can the temple rise again. From Texas to the West Bank. Instrumental in bringing the heifers to the Holy Land was Yitzhak Mamo of Yuvne, Jerusalem, a group committed to seeing a new temple built in Jerusalem's Old City. Excuse me. Quote, you can check to see if they have any white or black hairs, end quote, he told CBS News, explaining that any hair that isn't red would disqualify the cows from fulfilling their prophesied role. Finding the red heifers took years. The quest led Mamo not to Jewish breeders, but to Christian ranchers thousands of miles away. After a long search, we found them in Texas, he said, quote, or end quote. The quote is, after a long search, we found them in Texas, end quote. Texas Red Angus. To bypass strict laws in place at the time that banned the export of U.S. cattle to Israel, the heifers were classified as pets, Mamo said with a laugh. But to those following biblical commandments, the cows are no laughing matter, he added, stressing that it was no publicity stunt. Quote, Harry Potter is a good story. The Bible is not a story, he said. The Bible is the way of God to lead us, end quote. To be fair, completely agree. But while they're classed as pets, there are no plans to let the red heifers live out happy, long lives. A massive white altar awaits where they are to be burned on a plot of land overlooking the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, Mamo said the ceremony must be performed looking directly into where the ancient temple stood until it was destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. A Pandora's box that nobody can close. What Mamo didn't mention is that stands in the temple, stands in the temple's place now. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, which are among the holiest sites in Islam. Today, heavily armed guards ensure that only Muslims are allowed inside the complex. But that doesn't stop Jewish activists like Melissa Jane Cronfield from leading groups up the Temple Mount 5 days every week. Quote, "There's one true God, and it started here," end quote, she said before falling to her knees and bowing where the first temple, or the Temple of Solomon, was built in 957 BC. The second temple, or Temple of Herod, was a reconstructed version of the first, built in the 6th century BC according to scripture. Typically, people date that around 516, 520, something like that, but the exact date is not necessarily known. Quote, "It is important for the Jews to return and rebuild the temples," said New York native Cronfield, who founded the High on the Har organization to lead the tours. "It's not about taking anything from our Muslim brothers and sisters. It's not about the destruction of Islamic holy sites." Remember what I said about that parallel temple there, right? "It's about preserving this place and being guardians over the house of God for all people," end quote. But she makes no secret about what she wants to happen to the Dome of the Rock. Quote, "I believe it's going to go 100%. So she's obviously not in the same place as those we read about earlier, but it's still important to note because, as she said, that's not the goal. If there was a way that somebody was able to accommodate both, it'd probably happen. And I think there is a way. More on that in a moment. "The whole thing is going to go to build a temple," end quote, she said, insisting that the shrine and its golden dome should be preserved but relocated. "It's a suggestion that many fear, if acted upon, could make the current war even bloodier and see it spread rapidly beyond the Gaza Strip," which, by the way, totally accurate, 100% accurate. Whether or not you think it's justified is a different conversation, but just the one thing we want to make very clear is that would definitely happen. The Saudis would go to war with Israel. The Egyptians would go to war with Israel. The Taliban in Afghanistan would go to war with Israel. Indonesia would probably go to war with Israel, for crying out loud. Any Muslim majority government would likely go to war with Israel if the Dome of the Rock were to be destroyed or moved or anything of the sort. Okay? At least as it stands right now. Quote, "Everyone says that the building, the third temple, is what will bring the war. It could destabilize the Middle East," she said. "The Middle East seems pretty destabilized right now, and the war, if I'm not mistaken, is already here," end quote, which obviously not a bad point, but it would get worse, so that's also a point to consider. To be clear, Cronfield's dream of seeing a third temple constructed on the site is just that, a dream, and it is not shared by the Israeli government or by the vast majority of Israelis or Jews. But the suggestion has been more than enough to incite numerous Islamist groups. Hamas dubbed its... This is very important. Listen to this now. Remember I said earlier to start this that I think this is actually the primary reason the current war is taking place. This is the primary provocation in the mind of Hamas as far as why they had to attack now, why the status quo of a delicate peace, so to speak, no longer could fly, right? Hamas dubbed its October 7th terror attack on Israel, quote, "the Al-Aqsa wave," okay, or Al-Aqsa flood is another way that it's been translated. And the group's emblem features the Dome of the Rock behind two crossed swords. Remember the previous video we had done, that special report we had done some time back about the Hamas charter, which if you haven't seen, I will leave a link in the description. It's very important watching, I think. While most Muslims do not support Hamas's violence, they do share its unwavering devotion to sacred ground, says Mustafa Abu Sway, the Imam Al-Ghazali chair at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Quote, "Al-Aqsa Mosque belongs to all Muslims," he said. "So you will find reactions from Indonesia to Toronto to New York. Today, there are 2 billion Muslims worldwide," end quote. He told CBS that removing Al-Aqsa or the Dome of the Rock was unimaginable and warned that it would be, quote, "opening a Pandora's box that nobody can close," end quote. And I happen to agree with that, but not in the same way that he's talking about. Now, I just said that this would be a very good way to get everybody to fight. But remember the article we read from the Jerusalem Post. If the Islamic world were sufficiently convinced that the Dujjal or Mahdi or whatever was supporting this, we heard it from Dawish 15 years ago, right? I think I said his name wrong just now, but nevertheless, that sheikh that was in the previous article 15 years ago, we heard it from his own mouth. He said, if the Mahdi told us that the temple was to be rebuilt, I'd be the one to pick up the stones. We heard it from Frankel that a prophet, he believes, would have the authority to commence such a thing. You see what I'm saying? So is it true that this would be opening a Pandora's box nobody could close? Absolutely. And if it was gone about the way Kronfeld is saying, then it would absolutely lead to World War III and a religious war that would put the Crusades not only to shame, but it would honestly make it look like you're chilling in the kiddie pool, for crying out loud, right? The tsunami that would come in comparison to that kiddie pool is the kind of thing you would only find on planets like Jupiter. I don't know if Jupiter actually has liquid water, but crazy storm is my point, right? Something that, like, in comparison to a kiddie pool would be a extra world, or an otherworldly rather, kind of a storm. So if you compare it to the ocean, then imagine how much more magnitudes, right? I hope you guys are getting my analogy. It's a stupid analogy, but I hope you got it anyway. But Kronfeld's dream is not the only way this can be established. We just read that from 15 years ago. There is another way, and we heard it both from the mouth of a skeptical Muslim and an optimistic Jew. There is another way that a temple could be rebuilt in Israel. And that other way is primarily through the convincing of the populations that holy men on a mission from God have actually commissioned the building of this temple. And we also heard from Frankel and the others in that other article that this would be something that would be very important in the establishment of global religious cohesion. And remember, we have been talking for years now on this on this program about the coming, and it is coming, I assure you, the coming world alliance of various faiths, the United Nations of Religions, as I've called it, which I originally got from Shimon Peres, who, by the way, was the president of Israel when he made that claim. Only 5 years after the article we just read did he actually make that claim, that he wanted the United Nations of Religions, right? So, and again, like I said, we're going to have to do more special reports on this. Right now, I just want to get you guys up to speed with this and its relation to the current war, but I'm remiss if I don't talk about it at least a little bit, okay? Because this has been something that we here on the Watchdog, in fact, it's the primary reason the Watchdog exists, is this story that we have been telling you guys since the Facebook days back in 2015 when I was still a senior in high school, right? We've been telling you guys this is coming. It's coming. It's coming. And did I mention it's coming? It will be here soon. I've been talking about this for 9 years now. Those of you guys who've only been watching this on YouTube, you at least have seen it for 5 or however long we've actually been here. I think it's been 5 years that we've been doing Watchdogs on YouTube. So you know that I've been saying this for quite some time, and you guys have lived to see some of the predictions we've made here come to pass. I ain't no prophet. I want to make that perfectly clear, and I ain't no son of a prophet either. You just pay attention to these guys. They've been talking about it since 2009. They've been talking about it since 1987 when the Temple Institute was established. They've been talking about it for years and years and years and years and years. It's in the Hamas charter. It's in the Temple Institute's charter. It's in the things Shimon Peres said back in 2014. It's in the article from 2009. It's in the peace plan proposed by the Vatican in 1995. This has been, you don't have to have a solid grasp of where the future is going to understand the development of this particular story. You just have to listen to people. They tell you what is going to happen. And then we all close our ears and say, la, 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 I'm not listening, when they have told you explicitly what the plan is. And again, they didn't tell you on InfoWars. This isn't Andrew Torba coming on some half-cocked, half-drunk rant on his Gab platform, okay? This is rabbis, this is sheikhs, this is presidents of Israel, this is popes, this is spokespeople of Hamas who are saying these things. Leaders of the Temple Institute, leader of this initiative whose name is fleeting me that we had just talked about in the Jerusalem Post, who are saying these things. And these are mainstream news organizations like CBS, like the Jerusalem Post, like Middle East Monitor, that are telling you these people are saying these things. And nobody's listening. And the people who are listening are either dismissing it as that's half-cocked nonsense, or have this super bizarre conspiratorial view that this is going to somehow be like us bringing in the Messiah. We're going to all usher in peace like we're gods or something. They're just as nonsensical as those people who think we're going to fix the climate and colonize Mars. It's ridiculous. They have no idea what they're talking about. Same people implanting chips in human beings so that you can use your computer with your mind are the people who are saying, hey, we should build a freaking mosque, or a temple rather, perpendicular, parallel is probably a better word, to the Dome of the Rock, so that we can have a World Alliance of Religions for Peace, which is an existing organization, by the way. It baffles me. I'm ranting. I'm sorry. And I'm getting away from the actual red heifer story itself and more on to the things which are so important in understanding the context. And I do apologize for that, friends, but it is so amazing to me that you guys, and I don't mean you in particular, my audience, although I might mean you, I don't know, it depends on how you've been responding to these stories, but I mean you guys as in the general population of the planet. It is so mind-boggling to me that you just refuse to listen to what people in religious and political authority are telling you on mainstream news organizations or platforms or whatever. This is serious stuff. It's caused a war that, by the by, is the bloodiest war in the history of modern Israel. And it's not close. Something like 35,000 Palestinians have died as a result of this war, plus the Israelis, which I believe is about 2,000. So it's 37,000 people died. We just barely passed Iran and Israel fighting each other, which thank the Lord in heaven that did not devolve into what it could have easily devolved into. Okay. And I'm dead serious about that. Pray and thank God that we did not see a devolution into Middle East War I or World War III or whatever it's going to be. The second coming of the Crusades. I don't know. Okay. This is serious stuff. This red heifer thing, regardless of how you feel about it, is causing wars. The bloodiest war in modern Israel's history. And as it happens, potentially the longest. The Israeli war for if you don't count things like the intifadas, if you just count singular conflicts, the Israeli war for independence lasted a year. Friends, this war started on October the 7th. May the 7th is right around the corner. We're about to hit 7 months. So not only is this already the bloodiest war, despite being only half as long as the longest war, but it's looking like it may end up being the longest war in modern Israel's history as well. And what's causing it? These things that people refuse to listen to. This is a big deal, friends. It is a huge deal. I don't know what else to even, I don't know. I'm just ranting at this point. I don't understand why people aren't grasping this, I guess is what I'm saying. I know that there are people watching, that the people I'm speaking to directly are not the people I'm speaking about, because obviously you're watching this video. But my goodness, man, it baffles me. It baffles me that people refuse to just listen to what people have to say. These are people in authority, and well, I don't know. I just don't know why is the war starting. I just don't understand. A global religious order? Where did that come from? I don't know. Maybe if you paid attention for 5 seconds. Sorry. It sucks to be me right now. Moving on. While most Muslims do not support Hamas, as I just read that, he told CBS News, this is Mustafa Busway. He told CBS News that removing Al-Aqsa from the Dome of the Rock was unimaginable. I just read that. Let's move on. U.S. evangelicals, the cows in the second coming. Jewish activists have not been deterred by Hamas's October 7th massacre or the ongoing war in Hamas. Some have been using the conflict as a backdrop to promote their cause in the United States. At the recent National Gathering for Prayer and Repentance in Washington, D.C., Mamo spoke of his heifers and his hopes for a third temple in Jerusalem. Excuse me. The gathering was convened by U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson. U.S. House Speaker, right? He is witnessing this guy talking about his plan for a third temple. I don't know. I'm going to get on a rant again. I got to calm myself. The gathering was convened by U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, who gave a keynote prayer before a who's who of evangelical leaders and congresspeople spoke. Many American evangelicals believe the red heifer will usher in the second coming of Christ. Like I said, The same thing as the climate guys. The climate guys, oh, we're going to save the planet. We're so powerful. We can control the weather and control the temperature. And we're going to save the planet and go colonize Mars and go find aliens and all this other kind of nonsense, right? And we laugh at those people. Oh, haha, that's so funny. They're so absurd and ridiculous and delusional. And then you have people saying, you know what we're going to do? You know what we're going to do? We're going to force God to work on our time frame, right? We're going to actually coax God into a second coming of Christ. That's what we're going to do. We're going to seduce God with this magical temple, this brilliant architecture in Jerusalem, into having a second coming of Messiah. Trying not to rant, but it's not working. It's not working at all. Okay. Quote, we're going to accept the Messiah, and we need the Messiah to come, end quote. Brian Stinson, a Texan who helped bring the cows to Israel, said at the gathering, quote, for me, the red heifer is red for the blood of Jesus Christ. That's why it's red, end quote. I don't even necessarily think that that's wrong, but everything else that's wrong that I've been complaining about in this whole episode. Man, how long have we been going? 55 minutes? Okay. Back at his settlement in the West Bank, Mamo told CBS News the red heifers need only to pass a final purity test. The ceremony that he hopes will resurrect the temple and usher in the Messiah could take place any day. He said he understands why Hamas could be outraged. So he doesn't even shock him that Hamas wants to start a war over this, because why would it? I mean, he's fully cognizant of what he's doing. And again, the weird thing about this, to be honest with you, is I'm not even necessarily condemning him in a weird, it's a bizarre socio-political situation, right? Because we don't want World War III, and we don't want senseless provocation, and it is the holiest site in all of Islam, as well as a historical site. You guys know how much I love the preservation of history. And it is also the Jewish Temple Mount. It's their Temple Mount. It belongs to them. It doesn't belong to the Muslims. And it's the holiest site in their religion, so it'd be kind of like building a synagogue on the Kaaba, right? But also, I'm a Christian, so even though, like, I obviously have ethnic Jewish blood, but I believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, and that a third temple will be an affront to him, because you can't sacrifice animals for sin when the sacrifice for sin has already taken place. So it's this weird, like, the pragmatism, you keep it up, the consistent political ideology of my nationalism and my traditionalist conservatism says you tear it down, and then you have my Christian view saying you can't tear it down, that's an affront, and also it's a historical site. So it's like, I'm not even condemning the guy. Like, if I was an Orthodox Jew, I'd probably be on his side. You know what I mean? But without devolving into my opinions on this deeply complex issue, at bare minimum, we must recognize that this is the reason for the current war, that it's been developing for quite some time, and that it's a legitimate threat. It's a legitimate threat. The red heifers are in Israel. The purity tests have been passed. This is a little bit before that took place, but it's happened. The altar's been built, as we're going to read here in just a second. The cows have yet to be sacrificed. There were some people saying it was going to happen during the solar eclipse. That didn't happen. There were other people who were saying it was going to take place during Passover. Obviously, today was the last night, and unless I'm missing something, that didn't happen either. Other people have said it might happen during Shavuot, which is in a little over 40 days. And maybe it won't. I don't know. I have no idea. The Israeli government obviously doesn't want it to happen. So, and maybe it does happen and it doesn't mean anything because there's no temple. They just have the ashes and now have it for safekeeping or something. I have no idea where exactly it goes from here as far as those specific details. I know it's going to happen at some point, but we just need to recognize that this is going to take place. This is a real threat, and it's getting people killed. And regardless of whether or not you believe the Bible, or you believe the Jews have a right to the temple, or you believe in the pragmatic solution of just keep it there, or you're a Muslim, regardless of what you believe, this all remains fact. That it's happening, it's a real threat, It's the real reason the war is starting, and nobody's talking about it. It's driving me crazy. Quote, but I cannot understand, even if they are right, why they have to slaughter and rape people to win their war, which is perfectly true. Hamas is a despicable organization. Terrorists have been attacking us before we dreamed of these cows, he reflects. They don't need them as an excuse to kill, end quote. And that's true. I mean, it's in the Hamas charter, it's in the Quran, it's in the Hadith. They don't. Islam is a very violent religion, unfortunately, and there's not really anything that the Jews can do to stop that. It's also a deeply anti-Semitic religion, so there's that to consider as well. Okay, so there's more stuff we want to read. I want to go a little bit over my hour, so I'm sorry, friends, but there's more information that is necessary in this episode. Okay, so massive altar prepared for red heifer sacrifice. This is from Free Press Kashmir. March 29, 2024 is when this article was written. Again, it says massive altar has been prepared for red heifer sacrifice ritual in Jerusalem. So the altar exists, the new Sanhedrin exists, the new priesthood exists, right? Which just keep your eyes open for my special reports. I'm going to be going through all of this in the near future, Lord willing. And it's crazier than you think. It's even crazier than I'm letting on right now. I got to be perfectly honest with you. Anyways, this article. As Israel imports cows from Texas to fulfill ancient biblical prophecy, reports emerge of a massive altar being prepared in Jerusalem, which this is the third article that's confirmed this. There was the one from Press TV, the one from CBS, and now this one from Free Press Kashmir. This ancient ritual dating back to the time of Moses and steeped in religious significance has captured the attention of observers worldwide. Kind of. Sorta. There's definitely people worldwide who are paying attention, but it's definitely not on the eye. I mean, more people are concerned. I'll put it to you this way. More people are concerned with whether or not some dude at the Oscars dressed up as a devil 2 or 3 years ago than they are about the fact that we're on the precipice of Holy World War III. So there's that. Oh my goodness, I hate this whole entire planet. According to Jewish tradition, a perfectly red heifer is required for a ritual purification necessary for the construction of a third temple in Jerusalem. The construction of this temple is a fervent desire for some radical Jewish groups who believe it will lead to the arrival of the Messiah. However, the proposed location for this temple, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City, is also home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock Shrine, two of the holiest, although also oldest, two of the holiest sites in Islam. This convergence of religious significance has long been a flashpoint for conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. That is absolutely true. Since the era of Moses, only 9 red heifers have been sacrificed, a testament to the rarity and significance of the event. Now, on the precipice of a purported 10th sacrifice, attention converges on Israel, where preparations for the ceremonial offering have reportedly reached an advanced stage. In September of 2022, 5 red heifers were transported from the state of Texas to the land of Israel. Though one heifer has since been disqualified, the remaining 4 stand as candidates for the sacrifice, meticulously groomed and safeguarded for their role. Recent reports indicate the construction of a massive altar in Jerusalem, in Israel, reportedly in anticipation of the forthcoming sacrifice, an indication of the seriousness with which the endeavor is being pursued. The location for the ritual holds particular significance, with the ceremony slated to take place on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the historic site of the Temple Mount. Speculation regarding the timing of the sacrifice has intensified in recent weeks, with suggestions that it could coincide with the upcoming Passover celebrations, which did not end up happening. We're now past Passover. This was the last day, and as you can see, well, maybe you can't see actually because there's no window, but as you can see, it is now dark outside, which evening to evening is how we do Jewish days. So, Passover's over, and it didn't happen. I hope that was a good view for you guys. Recently, let me make sure I got this back to, okay, it's good. Cool. The location of the ritual holds particular significance, with the ceremony slated to take place on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the historic site of the Temple Mount. Speculation regarding the timing of the sacrifice has intensified in recent weeks, with suggestions that it could coincide with the upcoming Passover celebrations. Amidst whispers of potential dates and meticulous preparations, Israel braces for the repercussions of this historic event. Yet, against the backdrop of religious fervor and ancient tradition, geopolitical tensions loom large. Hamas has openly acknowledged the symbolic significance of the red heifers, citing them as a catalyst for hostilities against Israel. And I would rephrase that. The article just chose to say a catalyst. I would say the catalyst, or at least the primary catalyst. Again, they called their attack Al-Aqsa Flood or Al-Aqsa Wave, depending on how you translate it. It is quite clear that their perceived threat to the status quo, what they perceive as a threat to the status quo, is why this war is going on, right? And I hope that this video has made that very clear to you guys. The prospect of their sacrifice threatens to exacerbate existing tensions, raising concerns over potential unrest and international ramifications. So there is that as well. One last article I want to read for you guys, which is going over the date, like when will it actually be? It's from the same, I guess it's not. It's the Kashmir. I thought that this was also from, excuse me, from Free Press Kashmir, but I guess it's still Indian news, translated into English, of course, but Kashmir Yacht. I probably said that wrong. I'm sorry if there's any. I doubt I have any Indian listeners, but my apologies. I have no understanding of your language at all. Okay. When will red heifer be sacrificed? This was 4 weeks ago. It doesn't give a specific date, though. Jewish theology places special emphasis on the red heifer sacrifice because of its deep roots in the Torah and the Bible. The ancient records state that the ritual calls for the sacrifice of a red heifer that must meet strict requirements. It must be completely red without a single non-red hair, and it must be blemish-free. Following the sacrifice, the ashes are used in a purification rite that is necessary for anyone wishing to enter hallowed areas or partake in specific religious rituals. The recent developments about the ceremony has recently gained worldwide attention. That the use of the word recent there twice is redundant. Anyways, I doubt the writer's ever going to read this, but if you do, that it's a redundancy. According to reports, plans are in motion for the sacrifice, which might happen as early as Passover 2024. Again, did not end up happening. Earlier, the Kashmiriyat reported that 5 blemish-free red heifers were reportedly shipped from Texas to Israel in 2022, and they are presently being kept in Shiloh, Israel. The rabbis are required to hold off on performing the sacrifice until the heifers are 3 years old and still devoid of blemishes. Obviously, 2022 to 2024, that's at least 2 years. I don't know how old they were at the time they were shipped, but nevertheless, I imagine since they were saying as early as Passover, they must be 3, right? So anyways, the rabbis are required. I just read that. There must be a piece of land on Jerusalem's Mount of Olives where the red heifer sacrifice is performed. It is thought, though not confirmed yet, that someone has purchased that land. It is decided that the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem is a suitable site for the ritual, negating the need to build a new temple, which I guess is positive news in the sense that it doesn't necessarily mean some terrorist is going to blow it up or that they want to convince the government to blow it up, at least not at this time. But I don't know. Maybe let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. This is consistent with some readings of biblical prophecy that regard the temple's reconstruction as a signpost to the Messianic age. The red heifers themselves are the focal point of these preparations. These animals are imported from the United States and are given close attention to ensure they fulfill the stringent requirements specified in religious texts. Beyond religious circles, there is wider public interest in historical and prophetic trends that look toward the red heifer sacrifice. Many believe that this occurrence, which has significant ramifications for both religious and eschatological events, is a critical step towards the restoration of temple worship and sacrifice. And it definitely is. That's. I wouldn't say I think that. I'd say I know that for a fact. I hope I'm not too bold in saying that. Scholars, believers, and onlookers around the world are still debating and speculating about the time and execution of the ritual. In a speech delivered 100 days into the present conflict, Hamas claimed that the red heifer's arrival had an impact on their choice to launch the October 7th strikes in Israel, which ignited the conflict. Currently, there are claims circulating that the red heifer sacrifice may begin either just before Passover on April 22nd, 2024, or 50 days later on Shavuot. So there is also that. Now, obviously, we are past Passover. And again, Chag Pesach Sameach to all you guys. And that did not happen. And we're past the eclipse, which was a time that we didn't see it in any of the articles we read today, but it was a time that a lot of people were saying that the sacrifice might take place. And that obviously didn't happen. So will it be happening sometime within the next 50 days? Will it be happening sometime during Shavuot? Don't necessarily know, right? That it's not something that we can say definitively, unfortunately. I wish I could. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a while for this to take place, or for us to get any information as far as when this actually takes place, because Shavuot is not going to take place until June, specifically June 11th. The evening of June 11th is when it starts, and it goes on to June the 13th. So, so we just got to wait until then, right? We don't necessarily know until then. Obviously, it's been very worrisome for a lot of people. It's very worrisome for me. I'm sure that my getting super worked up like 20 minutes ago didn't cue you guys into that at all. But it hasn't taken place yet. When it will take place, we don't necessarily know, but we're going to continue to give you guys updates on this. And I want to get some of these special reports going as far as when was the new Sanhedrin established? When was new Phariseeism established? When was the new priesthood established? When was the Temple Institute established? What's their charter? What do they say? Reading a little bit more of that article, reading more about these World Alliance of Religions for Peace. I think I mention these things so much without you guys having a proper understanding of what I'm saying sometimes, that maybe it just seems like I'm just some kid ranting into his microphone, but it's much bigger than that. And I hope that it's been rather clear. I also think it'll allow us to get to other news, because I want to talk about American politics. I want to talk about, different ideological things. I want to write more of these blogs. There's so much information, and this news channel, because we only do stuff twice a week and don't even do that properly, has been lacking in that regard. So I want to get these special reports out. Hopefully we'll do so soon. Pray for me, guys. And really, I guess that's pretty much all I got for you today. So if you liked this video, please remember to like and share. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not done so. Hit that bell to get notified every time we go live. If you want to support my journalistic endeavors here, you can do so either by subscribing to my TheCynicogue News Patreon. By the way, if you subscribe to the TheCynicogue Patreon, they are not the same. They're different Patreons. I do have a blog on that Patreon, but it's been defunct for a minute. I'm going to try and revive it within, hopefully next Saturday. But nevertheless, just know that perk is not necessarily there yet. But if you want to support us, of course, the Patreon still helps. You can also give a one-time donation through the PayPal. Links will be provided in the description below, but if you're watching this live, they're not there yet. Remember, you can follow us on various social media platforms. I'm on Facebook, Gab, Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, Truth Social, MeWe, and Telegram at TheCynicogue. If you're there, please consider sharing this video there. Get it out to your friends, family, neighbors, anybody who you think will benefit, co-congregants, co-workers, what have you. Leave any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, critiques, or anything of that nature in the comment section below. Please remember to also get an account with Rumble and follow us over there on Rumble, because these videos are frequently taken down by YouTube, even despite the fact that we don't have a large base. So if we get a larger base, then obviously we're going to have more videos taken down. And yeah, that's all I got, man. God bless you. And if the Lord wills and tarries, we will see you guys here soon. Of course, want to ask you guys the question that I always ask, which is, in the face of Armageddon, and sometimes I fear we are super close to that, will you compromise? Shalom.